So let's start today. So in today's session, we are going to discuss about networking part again. So in networking, we are going to discuss about vSphere distributed switch. So in previous session, we discussed about standard switch. In that, in that switch, we configure a VM network port and VM kernel port, and we also discuss about the load balancing policies. Okay, so what are the load balancing policies we have? So when we are adding two NIC cards, and we also discuss about security policies, link state policies. So these are the policies we discuss about in the standard switch. Okay. So today we are going to cover distributed switch, and in distributed switch, first we try to understand what is the difference between a standard switch and distributed switch. Okay. So in a feature wise, we are going to will be having the comparison. Okay. Now you can see the screen. So first thing, in standard switch, we can have control on outbound traffic. Okay. You cannot control on inbound traffic, right? So when you when you are configuring like traffic shaping in standard switch, it allows you to control only the outbound traffic. But when you talk about like distributed switch, so we can have control on the outbound traffic, as well as we also have the inbound traffic. Okay. So one of the features distributed switch is going to support. So we have inbound traffic, so we can able to control that traffic. Okay. Now we can see this slide. Okay. So the next option here we have one of the feature distributed switch is going to support VM network port block. Okay. Suppose suppose like one port group we have created. In that port group we created suppose 10 virtual machines. Okay. So if you want to block something, you cannot block on the VM port level. Okay. But in distributed switch, you can block port level as well as we can even block the port level. Okay. So port level block, it is not possible in standard switch. Okay. So one of the feature it is going to support, we have something called a private LAN. Okay. So in standard switch, we talk about VLAN. We have created some kind of VLAN ID. So in standard switch, we have VLAN concept. Okay. But in the distributed switch, we have more than VLAN. We call it as private VLAN. Okay. So one of the feature it is going to support like load-based theming. Okay. So, in yesterday's session, we actually talk about load balancing policies. And anybody remember what are the load balancing policies we have? So here we have some kind of policies. One of the policies we have, route based on IP hash, route based on source MAC hash, route based on, originating virtual port, use explicit failover. Okay, so these are the four policies we have if you configure a standard switch. Okay. Now, in distributed switch, we also have one more type of policy that is called load-based theming policy. Okay. So these are the four common policies we have in standard as well as distributed switch. But one more policy is added in distributed switch. Okay. So that we call it as a physical, the physical link load balance theming. Okay. Now, what it will do, it will do the balancing based on the NIC card load. Okay. So this is one of the good concepts added in distributed. Okay. So what it's going to do, it is going to do the balancing, based on the NIC card load. Okay. So whenever any loads coming to the NIC card, suppose we have two NIC cards, one NIC card, you may have more load. So what it will do, automatically the traffic can be go from the other NIC card. Okay. Based on the NIC card load, it is going to configure the policy. That is especially in distributed switch. Okay. So one of the policies is one of the concept distributed switch is going to support, that is data center level management. Okay. And one thing I told you, this is not a part of our vSphere 6.7 VCP. This is actually the higher level class. Okay, if you go for VCAP, or after that whatever the courses we have in VMware, in that you actually learn about it. Okay, so vSphere we have only about a standard switch, and we have only the concept for the basic level of policy. Okay, but the reason like why I'm showing all these things, why, because if you work in a company as a VMware admin, so there is nothing without distributed switch. So distributed switch is compulsory. Okay, so we are going to see one of the main concept, like why the company go with the distributed switch, why not the standard switch. Okay, so let's say we have that is based on this feature, that is data center level management. Okay, so in one data center, let's say we have 10 ESXi, and we have to manage all the ESXi, so with a single interface. Okay. So by using a distributed switch, so previously, what we have done, if we have a server, we created one switch, maybe two, or maybe, we have created multiple switches. Okay. So, it will be specific to that particular ESXi. Okay. So it will be, specific to that particular server only. But, when we talk about distributed switch, you no need to create on individual server. Okay. So it is going to create on data center level, all the ESXi. So whatever the ESXi we have, so whatever available on data center can be added to that particular, distributed switch. Okay. So, and we can manage centrally. Okay. So normally what actually we have done, let's say suppose we have some kind of our environment. This is our virtualization environment. Okay. So now if you have multiple switches, suppose these are your ESXi. Okay. So if I want to do any, let's say here I'm making some kind of virtual machine. Okay. So this virtual machine where I'm connecting to this particular local switch, that is your standard switch. So here also we create a standard switch. Here also we have standard switch. Here also we have standard switch. Okay. So, here there is nothing like a centralized. So what we can do, when you talk about data center, when you talk about, the distributed switch, so distributed switch, we are not creating on the top of ESXi. Okay. So where actually we are creating, now we are actually creating in terms of our data center. That means on the top of vCenter, we are creating, the distributed switch, and this distributed switch can be connect all the ESXi direct centrally. That means whenever you create a virtual machine, so that virtual machine we can connect directly to this particular switch. Okay. So irrespective of like, whatever the ESXi you have, so when you make a virtual machine, so this virtual machine can be directly connected, and that can be centrally managed. Okay. So one switch you can have all the ESXi. One switch you can have all the ports. One switch you can have all the virtual machines. So this kind of concept available if you have distributed. Okay. But instead of distributed, suppose if you want to use your standard switch, so standard switch you have to create on a individual ESXi server. Okay. So this is one of the main features. So it also supports network vMotion. Okay. So migrate the port group, or migrate the virtual machine, or you can say like, and migrate the VM kernel port. All you can do with this vMotion. I mean, like you can migrate one virtual port to another, in one switch to another. This is possible in a distributed switch. Okay. So one of the feature it is going to support vNetwork switch APIs. Okay. So this vSphere distributed switch can, integrate it with another switches also, like if you talk about like we have some switches from Cisco Nexus 1000 virtual switches, and we also have like HP depend software switches. Okay. So whatever the software defined switches are there in the market, it is going to compatible with these distributed switches, and compatible, it's compatible, we can say like integrating with these with that switches also. Okay. So that is going to support with your distributed switches. Okay. So one of the policies, one of the feature it is going to support, we have something called per port policy setting. What is this? Okay. So per port policy mean like per port policy setting means, suppose like we have 10 virtual machines created previously. So what we discussed in, in port group level, we can enable or disable something called as promiscuous mode. If you remember, like last time we talked about the promiscuous mode. and MAC address change. Okay. So in security level policy, we already discussed this. Okay. So we are enabling or we are disabling on port group level. Okay. So whatever the virtual machines are there in port group. Okay. So it is going to apply all the virtual machine, all the machine it is going to apply. But here, what we can do on the distributed switch, we can configure policy on per port. Okay. So you have a distributed switch. On the distributed switch, we can give a we can able to configure per port, not port group. Port group is different, port is different. Okay. So port is a single port. Okay. Suppose 10 virtual machines are there in port group, you can apply a policy, even on one particular port also. Okay. So this is going to support if you configure a distributed switch in your network. And one of the policy, one of the feature is going to support port state monitoring. What is this? So this is nothing but we can you can manage port state as well. Okay. So port state means whatever the traffic is coming to ESXi and whatever the traffic out from the ESXi, I want to monitor that one. Okay. So that can be possible in distributed switch. Okay. Okay. So these are the things, these are the features are going to support if you use distributed switch, whereas standard switch, normally whenever you create an ESXi, by default, already we have a standard switch. Okay. So now let's see. Okay. So what we'll do, we try to configure the distributed switch. Okay. And I have another slide. See, this is if you have multiple switches, we create multiple port group. Okay. Suppose this is one ESXi, this is also one more ESXi, this is also one more ESXi. So every ESXi, or we can say like this is one switch, this is second switch. Okay. So that means you have to create, in standard switches, the management is individual ESXi, right? So for all server, you have to configure the switches one by one, one by one. Okay. Now let's see how to create a distributed switch. And as I told you, a distributed switch cannot be created directly on the ESXi. So this thing you have to remember that. Okay. So that means if you right click on the ESXi, so here we don't see any option for creating distributed switch. And here also, like if you can add networking, so here we don't have any option for making a distributed switch. So distributed switch can be created directly from data center. That means you have to go to your data center. And here, right click on the data center. So you can see there is an option here, networking. Just go to the networking part. And till now, like whatever the switches, whatever the port group we created, all the port group information is available. Okay. Now let's say suppose I want to know like one of the port group is available DMZ, one of the port group is VM network. So these are the port group we created. How many ESXi associated with this DMZ port group? Okay. So we have connected only 2 hosts. Okay. So that means this port group we have to create every ESXi. Okay. So every ESXi you have to create individual. Then only now the information of that particular host will be available. Okay. So we created DMZ port group on 2 ESXi. What are those ESXi? Even you can see like the number of hosts. Okay. So that is created on ESXi 1 and it is also created on ESXi 2. Okay. What about ESXi 3? If you have many ESXi here, so that means that is not connected with this port group. Okay. So here, what we can do, just right click on your data center, and here we have the option distributed switch. Okay. So we are going to make a new distributed switch. So here is asking the name. Name depends, like whatever the name you want, you can define. So by default name is like D switch, that is your distributed switch, or whatever the name you decided, you can even put the name. So okay, we can go with the same name, no problem. So here, right now the version which we are using, okay. So you want to get a functionality with 6.7 or 6.5 or 6.0. Okay. So obviously, like whatever the new version which I'm using, I want to get all the latest features which is available in 6.7. Okay. So I'm selecting the 6.7 feature, and here we have suppose number of uplinks. Okay. What is this number of uplinks? Uplink is nothing but uh, like how many physical NIC cards are there in your machine. Based on that, you can able to add multiple uplinks. Okay, let's say I'll be having ESXi, and every ESXi, suppose I'll be having 8 or maybe like 10, or maybe like maybe I'll be having only 4 physical NIC cards. So based on that, I can have number of uplinks. Okay, that means I can able to handle my traffic which is coming to my distributed switch with these 4 uplink, means 4 physical NIC cards. Okay, and input output, you can see input output control is available. That is a feature that is available in your distributed switch. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I just want to make only the distributed switch. Regarding port group, we'll see. Okay, so if you want to make a port group right now, so even you can also make a port group. So what is port group, we'll see now. I'll say next and just finish. So here, when you go to your data center, so one switch is created, and when you go configure, and when you go with topology, so here you can see this is same, just like dummy, nothing. So this is our switch, and what is connected right now? Nothing. So right now we have 4 uplinks, but these 4 uplinks are not connected to anyone. We don't have any ESXi here, and we don't have any port group. Okay. So now the next thing is we are going to make a port group. Okay. So first thing you have to remember, in standard suite we have 2 types of port group. One of the port group we have created like VM kernel, and one of the port group we have VM network. Okay. So that means VM network is specially designed for the virtual machine, and VM kernel that is specially designed for the management, vMotion, we have different types. Okay. Now, but when you configure a distributed switch, in distributed switch, we don't have multiple types of port groups. Okay. In distributed switch, we have only one type of port group, and that port group we call it as DV port group. Okay. And in DV, DV port group means it include everything. Okay. So that means like suppose if you want to keep virtual machine, if you want to have management, vMotion or storage traffic, so whatever the traffic you want to handle on your network, so that is you can able to handle in terms of your distributed switch. Okay. That means we don't have any special port group for the IP, we can say like storage. We don't have any special type of port group for the virtual machine. Okay. So here we have only one port group that is called DV port group. Okay. So now how we can do this? So simply we can go here. See, previously the options was here only, but if you talk about the new 6.7, the VMware has changed the topology here. Okay. See, previously like we have directly the option. So here only you have to right click and you have to do that. Okay. So now where I can go? Okay. So here we have an option, action. You see, just go to the action. On the top of action, here we have distributed port group. See, we already created distributed switch. In distributed switch, we are going to create a port group, and the name of the port group we call DV port group, means distributed port group. Okay. So whatever the name you want, you can give. Let's say what name? I want to make a port group by the name like I'll be having production. And what are the production machines I'm going to have? I'll keep all the production machine to this particular port group. VLAN ID. Okay, let's say we can give a VLAN ID. We can keep VLAN ID 20. Next and finish. So this is our production. Okay. I can create one more distributed port group. See, according to requirement, you have to make many port groups. And port group is nothing but every port group we are going to keep the virtual machine, like what kind of traffic you want to handle on your vSphere environment. For that, you need to make a port group. Okay. So let's say I'm creating DMZ. For the DMZ, let's say I'll keep in VLAN ID 10. Finish. So we have two port groups. Now I want to have one more port group for the management. Management. That means I'm going to manage. So we don't require any port number here. I can make another one for the vMotion also. I can create for the storage. Depends. For the fault tolerance. Let's say for the vMotion. Now. But right now, this is just only, we can say this is like a dial. Means nothing. Dummy. So which is connected where? So DMZ, it's not connected to anywhere. Okay. So after that, now what we need to do? You have to connect the physical adapter to this distributed, port group. Okay. So by default, like we configure standard switch, and there we have given a physical adapter. So now what we can do? We can migrate all the physical adapter to this, to this distributed switch. How we can do that? Just click, and here we can say add and manage host. Okay. So we are going to add the ESXi information. So just click add and manage the host. So what do you want to add? You want to add the host. Host means the ESXi. You want to add host networking, or you want to remove host. Okay. So I just want to add host. Next. So which host you want to add? Why? Because right now in my scenario I have three network, three ESXi. So first let me add my first ESXi. See, if you are expert at the time you can add three. Okay, but some kind of confusion you may have, like you need to remember in that particular ESXi, whatever the port groups are available. So that port group you need to migrate to which port group in in distributed. So better is try to add one by one so that there will be no confusion. Okay, so I'm adding the first ESXi next. Okay, now the next thing is, on the top of first ESXi, we have 4 NIC cards, and these NIC cards actually connected. Okay. So now what I can do, I can assign, VM NIC card. I'm going to assign uplink 1, VM NIC 2. I'll be assigning uplink 2, VM NIC 3. I'll be assigning uplink 3, and for fourth NIC card, I'll be giving 4. I mean, so whatever the uplinks are available here. So see, here we have uplink. You can see. So we have 4 uplink, and these 4 uplink I'm adding 4 NIC cards. Okay, so for uplink 1, I'm adding from ESXi 1, I'm adding VMNIC 1, VMNIC 2, VMNIC 3, VMNIC 4. That means 4 NIC card I'm adding to these 4 uplinks. Okay, if you have multiple, you can add one more also. Okay, now the next thing you have to go next. Okay, now when you if you remember, like in ESXi 1, we have already configured some kind of in ESXi 1, we already have a switch. In that switch, we already have a port group like vMotion. We also have a port group like the management port group. So what we can do now, we have to migrate those port group to this particular switch, distributed switch. Okay. So here, so one of the switch is there, switch 1, and that switch is going to have management port. So what I can do, I'm going to assign to a port group. Which port group? So this is for management. So what I'll do, I'll keep. So in my distributed switch, I have already created some port groups. So what I'm good, what I'm doing from from the standard suite which I created on ESXi one. So in ESXi one, I have already created some code group. So that code group I'm migrating to distributed switch. So where you want to add? So I'm adding to management. Okay. Now I also have vMotion port group. So that vMotion port group I'm going to assign. I'm going to migrate to my vMotion. Okay, so that means in a real time, according to the requirement, you have to remember this. Okay, so if you do mistake later on, also you can able to do the changes. Okay, but make sure whenever you do this practical, you have to be 100% careful when you are adding or when you are connecting to the port group. Okay, because your complete vSphere networking depends on this particular switch. Next, okay, and here you can see in ESXi one, I don't have any virtual machine. Okay, so if you have virtual machine, so that virtual machine also, like if you have some kind of port group, so that port group also you are going to, you can able to migrate those port group to where, we have already created one of the port group like DMZ production, whatever the port group you have created for the virtual machine. So that port group you have to remember again. So right now we don't have any virtual machine. Simply I'll go next and finish. So we added the first ESXi. So what will happen here from the ESXi? So that is going to remove from standard switch, and all the connectivity will be given to the centralized switch that is distributed. So we added only one ESXi. So like that, you have to add all the ESXi whatever we created. Now same thing we can do here. I just go add host, add host. Which host you want to add? Now I'm going to select the distributed. Second ESXi. Next, and here also what I can do, I can assign uplink 1 to uplink 1. I can able to configure uplink 2, 2 to uplink 2, uplink 3 to VMNIC 3, and VMNIC 4. I'm going to assign uplink 4 here. Next, in second switch also we have only management. So here I'm going to assign a port group management. Another port group is there for vMotion. So that vMotion port group I'll be giving to vMotion. Next, and here we can, I don't have anything, finish. Now, we have another ESXi. We can also add that one. ESXi 3. VMNIC 1 to uplink 1. Uplink 3. Okay. But in see in ESXi 3, we don't have vMotion, we don't have a lot of port group. We have only one port group, that is management. So we can migrate this port group to the management only. Next and finish. Okay. So like that you can able to migrate. Okay. So now here you can see. Now uplink 1, we have 3 ESXi. So ESXi 1, ESXi 2. So the management traffic, how it's how it's going. So that management traffic will forward from all these microns. Okay. So now if you go the properties of these, if you go the settings, so here also you may have all the same kind of things. Okay. Um, then go to any port group level, edit setting, teaming and failover. So here now you can see instead of 4, we have one more rod based on physical NIC load. So this is one more option is available here. Okay. So what it will do, based on the NIC card, it is going to load the traffic. Okay. And here also, like suppose if you say we added 4 NIC cards on that particular switch. So whenever the traffic is coming, so D1 like is going, you want to active all the 4 NIC cards, or here also based on the requirement, one of the NIC card you can give dedicated to one of the port group. Okay, so according to the requirement, you can decide like which LAN card traffic you want to handle with which port group. Okay, so here let's say you are using some production virtual machine, and I want to give one dedicated LAN card to I want whenever the traffic is coming to my on my vSphere, so the traffic I want to handle only from my particular NIC card. Okay, see right now we have 4 NIC cards. Okay, but instead of 4 you may have multiple also. Okay, so these are the policies available in terms of distributed switch. Understand? So the management of distributed switch is very simple. It's not very complicated. Okay, everything you can able to sort out. Okay, so how you want to handle the vMotion traffic? You just go edit and you can go NIC teaming failover. And right now, like the traffic of vMotion is going to handle all the 4 NIC cards. I don't want 4 NIC cards. What I can do? So I just want to use only one. So I can say unuse. So maybe coming session, like when we have a storage part, I'll show you like how we can able to unuse the NIC card and how we can give a dedicated NIC card for dedicated traffic. Okay, so that is possible in distributed switch. We can have port level policy, whereas the standard switch, no, that feature is not going to support. Okay, so here we also have port state monitoring level. Okay, so you can able to monitor port settings like whatever the traffic coming to your ESXi and whatever the traffic which is going off from your ESXi, you can able to do the monitor. Okay. So these are the settings available on the top of your vSphere distributed switch. Okay. So do this practice. If you have any questions, you can ask me.